Thank you, Kat, and thank you guys for being here today. I'm super excited to have this conversation. It's one that's not been had for a really long time, and it needs to get out there. So thank you for coming. Hope you all guys had a great lunch and you're ready to learn some really interesting things. I want to launch right in and introduce my awesome panelists who are sitting here with me today. On my left is Jennifer Hohn, and Jennifer rose from art director to executive creative director in just 3 years at one of the nation's original integrated agencies, Vladimir Jones. Her use of ego-free leadership, imagine that in our industry, ego-free leadership and empathetic instinct inspires the trust leading to groundbreaking work. She's an award-winning creative with over 20 years of experience and also a driven change maker and creative industry speaker. Currently, she's freelancing and collaborating with other advertising leaders while she's plotting her next move. So, welcome, Jennifer. Jenny Bergman, we have right over here in the middle. Jenny is 3%'s design director, guys. So, as you look around, we have this woman to thank for all the beauty that we're surrounded with today. So, Jenny is a self-described professional noticer, which I think is one of the most awesome monikers I've heard in this industry. Over the years, she's lent her unique skill set to some of the world's top brands, including Staples and TripAdvisor. Now, she spends her time working for rock stars at her own firm called the Secret Bureau of Art and Design. So happy to have you here, Jenny. And Rosa Sheng. Rosa is on the far left. Rosa has been an award-winning architect leading creative teams for over 24 years. She's designed internationally acclaimed projects, including the Pixar Animation Studios campus and the famous Apple flagship store on Fifth Avenue that none of us can ever get into, but always want to. Today, she's a principal at Smith Group in San Francisco and director of their Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion program. So welcome, Rosa. Thank you for being here. So in this very far empty seat is someone named Invisible Rich, we've decided to call him. But he's not invisible. He's actually submitted a video for the panel today that I'm going to show in a few minutes. But Rich Silverstein. Rich is a co-founder of Goodby, Silverstein & Partners. He requires very little introduction because we all know him and we've all been so jealous of the brilliant work he's been able to produce along with his company for so many years. As a creative, what some of you might know is that Rich has spent a lifetime looking at the world differently, which is all about what this session is about, people who think differently. He's managed to do that and build one of the most successful careers and agencies of our times as a result. So let's take a look at the video that Rich submitted for this.
Describe Rich in 3 words? Do I only get 3 words?
Opinionated,
driven, and impatient.
Rich's superpower is his ability to think out of the box.
How does Rich's mind work?
It's sharp and surgical.
Rich's mind works in mysterious ways. You always know where you stand with Rich.
He could judge a typeface without knowing what the sense of the thing was, which was amazing. And you know, for a while I found that irritating, but I've learned that it actually is like an extra dimension of perception that the rest of us don't have. And it really allows you to see the world in a totally different way. And it's unusual and useful to people like me.
Well, hello, I'm Rich Silverstein, and I'm very sorry that I couldn't be with you today. I feel like I'm in therapy with a couple hundred people, or maybe 1,000. I don't know how many people you are, but all right, you're going to hear a little bit about my problems. I'd like to say that I was born with a trifecta of problems. Left-handed, doesn't seem so bad, unless you are forced to play sports that way. Dyslexia, which is a real tough one, and ADHD. So all that combined is what I've dealt with for, I'm 69 years old. And how do you deal with that? And well, thank God there's advertising, because I think it's the only profession that would really embrace all those weird things. Well, school was really tough for me, okay? I just could not understand. I couldn't take in the information. My SATs, I mean, I got into Parsons School of Design. I don't even know how I got into that, because my SATs, I just kind of circled different things as a shape. It was just crazy, and of course, my SATs weren't very good. But then I have this photographic mind. I see visual things. It's kind of like the Bruce Willis film. I see dead people. I see spaces between type. I see every little thing about it. I see how sun hits a building. I watch sunrise. I watch the clouds move. I see things. Thank God I have something to offer. Well, a little advice to the parents of kids who have ADHD or dyslexia. Forget about the left-handed part. Let them do something they really like. You know, if it's gymnastics, if it's music, if it's art, let them do it whole hog, because they have to feel good about themselves.
I think what makes him great as a leader, because of what he's grown up with, is that he can see through everything, and he can see the simplest essence of all of this chaos, all of the different ideas that are out there. He can make the connections between them. And he's also an amazing listener. So when he's sitting in a room and there's so many voices, he can pick through them and just find like the greatest idea in the room.
Thank you, Rich, for that amazing video. I really, really love what the last woman in the video said about listening more, feeling more, hearing more. You know, it's something that I think all of us as creatives experience. We are wired differently. We are a little bit more sensitive. I myself, over my career, have gotten feedback, usually really good feedback, but I've been also called sensitive. I've been called thin-skinned, and you know, I think at this point I really am okay with that, because I know those qualities make me who I am, and they make my work what it is, and they make me a creative leader in the way that I creatively lead. So I'm okay with all of those words now, and I also think that they're empathy. They're empathetic words, because I think as creatives we all innately are empathetic people. So I'm going to pass over to Jennifer for the first question, because she's done a lot of research and has had a lot of experience working with empathy and creatives, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about the different kinds of empathy that creative people have, how it affects their work, and how it affects the people around their work.
Well, I think in the creative industry overall, there's no place where empathy plays a bigger part. The people on the creative team have to use it as a tool to get into somebody else's shoes and advertise something to their target audience that may not be them. And then on the other side of things, as creative leaders, it's really up to us to try to get to the bottom of who each person on our team is individually, because that's really what neurodiversity is all about. Everybody thinks differently. And it's on us to pull out the best way to coach them, the best way to make sure we're just evening out the playing field, so that the extroverts can compete with the introverts, and making sure we're setting the stage so that our people can thrive and we can have unique and different voices at the table, and everybody's being heard.
Awesome. Jenny, I know you consider yourself to be a very sensitive and empathetic person yourself. Can you talk about how you as a creative and the things that you feel and you go through on a daily basis, how has that positively impacted what you do and how you create?
Well, first I'll say this. So it occurred to me right before we got up here. I'm looking around and I'm like, I did all this, and it looks beautiful and it looks great, but like every day I wake up thinking, I'm a shitty designer. And I'm sure a lot of you in this room can identify with that. So I work every day to prove myself wrong. So it's, you know, I'm a high functioning depressed person. I live with anxiety. So the depression side, I feel, leaves me open in a lot of ways to compassion and empathy in a way that, you know, is different. But the anxiety is the thing that is my engine. So like, there's two sides of it. The depression kind of pulls me down, but the anxiety moves me forward. And I think, you know, living with depression and anxiety helps me like see in other people, you know, those same struggles, and, you know, I'm more apt to say, well, you did a great job, you tried really hard, you know, I understand where you're coming from, and it helps me communicate better with with who I'm collaborating with. So.
You talked a little bit earlier about how when you are feeling anxious, and all of us have that anxiety when we're working on projects and we're second guessing ourselves and we're listening to a lot of different voices, you know, clients and people around us sort of making us question ourselves. But sometimes from that anxiety can come an extreme amount of energy and a desire to get shit done, like get it done so it's not tapping you on the shoulder anymore. And I thought that was a really excellent point. And if you could stop fearing the anxiety that is inevitably going to come when we're working, because it does as creatives, and just use it and utilize it to your advantage to get stuff done, get it done well, and put it behind you and move on to the next thing.
It's taken me a long time, honestly, to accept and embrace those qualities within me and to own them and like to use my anxiety to fuel it. And I think when we spoke before, I was like, I know I'm going into like a little bit of an up phase where I'm a little bit manic. I'm gonna use that energy for as long as I've got it to keep me moving forward, and it's gonna be really inspiring and creative time. I also prepare for the times when it's low and low energy, and that's like the time that I use to build and plan. So it's only in the past couple of years that I've been able to say, this is happening, this is okay, I can make this work for me. So
that's awesome. Thank you. Rosa, so you've spent your career being a champion of diverse creative teams, diverse thinking, allowing everybody on your team to have a voice, allowing your clients to have a voice in rooms when it's appropriate, and really getting everybody involved in the ideation process. Can you talk a little bit about some of the things that you've put in place at your organization that help that?
Absolutely. I think oftentimes we think of design processes as more of the creative genius, the lone creative in the room that comes up with the magical idea that solves all the client's problems, when in actuality, we are a group of collaborative people that are coming up with ideas that end up becoming the idea. And there's this frustration of the loudest voice in the room getting heard, if you will, and the other voices that aren't comfortable sharing, not accepting or not being accepted or heard. And the way we adapt to that is that we've been using design thinking as a methodology to get as many voices as we can, not only within the workplace, but with our client groups as well. So I don't know how many of you have heard of dot voting or doing a quick post-it ideation where you brainstorm and you come up with as many ideas as possible. You dot vote to decide where your opinions lie, and then you spend time discussing why there are certain outliers, why certain ideas got the most dots, the measles, or why certain ideas got 1 or 2 dots or no dots. And then from those discussions, there's this sense of democracy that normally wouldn't come out if the introverts or the quiet people in the room didn't feel comfortable with speaking, if they were checked out because they thought the loudest person in the room always got the point across. And we found this amazing connection not only within the workplace, but within our client base, that the client actually feels more connected and engaged in the entire process with us, resulting in better outcomes.
Yeah, it's I love the dot voting. I think it's a really interesting process. We back for all the Saatchi and Publicis health folks are out there. We call them throwdowns at our place, but it's an opportunity to get everybody in a room, and even if you're not comfortable being in a large setting and coming up with concepts, it at least allows you to contribute in your own way and build on ideas that are up on the wall and get your creativity out in that way. I also think, it makes me think about the successful times I've done that with clients and brought clients into the room at the very initial stages of conceptual thinking. And, I think it's a very old school way of thinking that creatives don't want to hear what clients have to say. We crave hearing what clients have to say. It's another form of diverse thinking that we need to spark more thinking in us. So I love bringing clients and creatives at all levels together to discuss projects and throw out ideas and see what happens. And the dot voting that Rosa talked about is a great way to kind of bring everybody together and just breaking down those silos and those barriers and getting people positively moving forward. So Jenny, back to you for a sec. So most companies, they're not fortunate enough to have a Rosa who have, brilliantly come up with these ways of getting people to speak their mind and getting their creativity out. You're obviously at your own organization now, but can you talk to us a little bit about other organizations that you've been a part of and the processes that they did or didn't have in place to allow for that creative freedom and allowing the introverts and the extroverts to be able to play and create and make ideas come to life?
I'm not sure if I can answer that question thoroughly. I can speak from my own experience, which is that I've, over the years, really struggled to find a professional home, an emotional home. 3% has definitely come the closest because we all bring our ideas and our whole selves to the table, and we're all so supportive, and every idea is a great idea, and okay, not all of them,
but they spur something.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
So I'm not the kind of person who can thrive in a 9-to-5, Monday through Friday environment where my time is expected to be billable, X percentage of time, that I'm expected to produce X, Y, Z. I recognize that there's a business need for that, but I've just never been able to thrive in that kind of an environment. And I took a leap and started freelancing and started my own business doing what I really love to do, because that kind of the sort of typical work environment just didn't meet my needs. And being an introvert, definitely being in an environment where the loudest voice in the room is
King.
the one that everybody listens to, I just did not thrive because I'm an introvert. I like to kind of work a little more collaboratively and quietly. I get lost in those kind of spaces, but I've found a way to champion it myself in a different way. In a different way. So I found my way.
Yeah, I think it's great, and I think it's an important thing to talk about, because most of us don't have ideas in the 9-to-5 work hours. Who knows when ideas hit us, and we all like to work in different ways. I myself, I don't like to ideate in large groups. I do much better one-on-one with a partner or with a very small team. But some people thrive in those big brainstorming environments. Everybody's different, and I think as business leaders, we should be cognizant of that and put things in place that are flexible within our organizations. So we're not forcing people to work a certain way. We're not taking diverse thinkers and kind of homogenizing them with a process that is a one-size-fit-all process. Jenny, you made me think of something that Rosa had said a while back about, what was it, idea hijacking? And it's just something that usually happens in those big kind of group ideation sessions that all of us have experienced at a point in time, but Rosa has a really interesting way of talking about it. So talk about idea hijacking for us for a sec.
How many of you have experienced a situation where you've presented an idea and then other people are talking around it, and then it seems that nobody heard what you just said, and then somebody else says it more emphatically 2 seconds later,
right?
And somebody else affirms and says, that's a great idea, to that other person, right? I call that idea hijacking. I don't think, it's funny because one could be defensive and think it's intentional, and I've actually studied it over the years, only to realize that those people that tend to do that, they're not 100% evil as you might think they are, but they're actually not listening to you. They're so worried about losing that thought bubble in their head that they're not listening to you, because if they stop to listen to you, they're going to forget that thought bubble in their head. But unconsciously, they kind of hear some part of it, not acknowledging that you're the one that said it. So by the time they come up with the idea, they have kind of subconsciously heard you say it. But again, that boom of, I just had a great idea, was in fact this reality of not being present and listening to the other people in the room. So I think if we are more conscious of that, if we actually write down our idea while the other person's talking and say, I'm not going to interrupt that other person, I'm going to let them finish speaking, I'm going to write down my ideas so I don't forget them, I'm going to write down their ideas too, and then I'm going to say yes and, right? So it's not, oh, my idea is the best or their idea is the best. It's, I heard your idea and I want to add my idea to that, and yes, and these collective ideas together make the better idea, right? So instead of being very territorial, transforming the conversation about ideas not as belonging to one singular person and that person getting credit for it, but having it be more of a recipe, an iteration of sorts that comes up with the most salient points that wins the pitch or the concept.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think just pointing out to people who are serial idea hijackers, just pointing it out that they're doing it, I think can go a long way, because I think oftentimes they truly don't know that they're not listening, and then coming up with something that is, exactly what someone else just said 5 minutes ago. So it's a good point that I think everybody needs to kind of put into practice.
And I've been on the giving end too. So that's when you realize it's not, I always am on the receiving end, but we do it to each other. So we just have to be more conscious and aware of that process.
Yeah, and it's about listening again, right? It's about really fully engaging in a room and with your teams and listening, and stop, being in your own head so much. That's great. So Jennifer, you've talked a lot about creatives and different ways creatives like to work, different ways, different thinkers like to work, and in the age of open office space, and my own company is about to make a move right after Thanksgiving to a huge open office space, and we're having a lot of conversations about what that means, especially creatively, for people who like to work a certain way. So you've put some things in place in the organizations that you've been a part of that are just thoughtful. They're not necessarily big, expensive ideas or rebuilds, but they're just thoughtful, sensitive ideas to creative people and how they think and work. So can you talk about that for a moment?
Well, I know whenever the open office space comes together, there's this idealized world that everybody's going to collaborate all of the time and it's just going to happen. But it really can't be forced. I think you have to have the spaces where you can grow each other's ideas, you can build on thoughts, but then you also have to have the spaces where you can go away and think about it, process it, especially the introverts on your team. I know in some of the previous places I've been, I've worked to create spaces where the creatives could have their monitors to the wall. And what that does is it allows people who are really self-conscious to feel like they have the safe space to create, to do things that look bad, because you have to do bad things before you get to the good things, and just really get into the flow of what creativity is all about in the workplace, which is hard to do, as you know. Just finding that space where during the workday you can get in your own head, you don't have to be afraid that you're at the zoo and you're being judged. So it cuts down on that self-editing that really takes away from creativity.
Yeah, open offices are my idea of hell. Like, no.
But I think it goes back to what you were saying too earlier, Jenny. It's about time, right? Time in a seat that is sometimes really prison-esque. It's really restrictive to the way that most people come up with ideas and like to work. So, I think we've all kind of rethink hours for creative people and really be flexible about allowing people to, take the afternoon off and go, sit in a cafe, go sit in a museum somewhere, go, do whatever you want. It's fine. As long as people are productive, and that's really what this conversation is about. It's not, flexing all of our processes that we have in place so that we're making creative people happy. Who the hell knows what makes us happy? I don't know. Chances are some of us will never be 100% happy, but we can be successful if these right things are put in place that give us the ability to ideate and conceptualize and play in our own way. So
that resonates with me, because how many times have I said, I'm gonna go look at art, I'm feeling burned out, or I just wanna have the time and space to just sit and look through an art book or whatever and not feel like I'm being judged for not being at my desk,
Right.
So.
And so much of the good creative ideas come when our brains are on autopilot.
Oh, God,
so
yeah.
you have to work in that in-between time where you're not trying to be creative right at the second, but you're walking away, you're taking it into the back of your brain and coming back to it. It makes such a big difference.
It definitely, downshifting is so important, because I find that my brain is still working on the problem in the background. I'm still designing in my head, even if I'm actively doing something else, even if I'm walking with my kid, even if I'm going grocery shopping, or folding laundry, my brain is still actively working on it. So it's I don't have to be in front of my screen, to be designing. It's happening, I'm solving the problems.
Right.
It's just happening in a different layer of thinking, so.
And I think that's, that's on us as creative leaders and creative people to start to talk about this with our organizations so that they understand it's not about asking for time to go play with our animals or something. It's about asking for time to allow creativity to happen in places that aren't necessarily within the walls of our agencies or our companies. And it's okay to ask, and it's really okay to keep having the conversation that we're having here back at your companies, because that's the only way things are going to change. And as long as we keep producing great work, there's no way that we can be told no, because again, it's all about setting creative people and leaders up for success that's going to make agencies successful and this industry successful. So Rosa, back to you for a second. You talked in a very funny way a couple of days ago about Mad Men, and yes. About you asked about that trope of that one sort of agency leader who puts the stake in the ground and everyone kind of falls into place and delivers on those marching orders. Can you talk a little bit more about that today?
Yes. So I was comparing architecture to advertising and agency work. In the same vein, there's been a conversation about the star architect, and you may have heard of one or two of them in the news recently, tied unfortunately to the Me Too movement. And it's been this reality check, if you will, of the abuse of power and the abuse of the idea of the creative genius, if you will, that there's this one voice. So there's been an awareness check, if you will, and a larger conversation about creativity in general, who gets anointed and deemed as creative, right? And there's a study that I mentioned to Kathy about creativity bias done by Duke University Fuqua School of Business, Devin Proudfoot and his team, that compared a series of studies about creativity. One of them happened to be about architects versus fashion designers. And what happened was we're conditioned to think about, name 5 famous architects, and I bet you they're all men, and how many can name 5 famous women architects? So in architecture school, we're taught conditionally that the famous architects and the great designers were men. And in this study, it was affirmed by the fact that there was a simulated architect's portfolio, drawings, renderings, photographs of projects. Half the group was told it was a man, half the group was told it was a woman. both men and women called the man's portfolio ingenious, creative, revolutionary, and not the woman's portfolio. So it just begs the larger question, even in any creative industry, are we conditioned to think about creativity aligned with conditionally biased male traits, if you will, whether it's risk-taking or divergent thinking or competitiveness, right? And how do we debunk and dissect that and then rebuild it to become a new theory about creativity where how many of you are comfortable going to work every day in your own skin, being unapologetic about yourself and bringing your full identity to work? Because that's half the battle. If you're trying to pitch to a client about creativity and you're living in a mask of who you are, you're posing as somebody else because you think that's what's going to be accepted, you're not giving your full self, you're not truly being creative, right? How do we untap the potential that we all have in, like what Rich was saying about embracing what is perceived as disorders and leveraging that as your thing that you bring to the table that nobody else has? Each of us has a unicorn trait. What is that trait, and how do we leverage that in a succinct way, right?
It's interesting you said that, because I think for a long time in my career, I thought everything I was doing was wrong. Because I went to art school, I didn't go to ad school. I didn't get a degree, I got a diploma. There was a lot of self-talk about, oh, I don't deserve to be here, but all I had to do was flip this script.
Right.
And claim it and say, oh, I'm not doing it wrong, I'm just doing it my way. And
the light bulb goes off, right?
Right. And since then, I've been able to really feel a lot more confident about, nope, this is how I do it, this is how I think.
Yeah, and I think especially in creative leadership, just knowing there's no right or wrong way to do it, especially at the creative director level. Everybody has their own style. You don't have to emulate exactly what your creative director used to do. You have to find what works for you and the team that you build.
I love this subject, and it reminds me of a story when I first became creative director many years ago at a different agency outside of Publicis Health, and the announcement went out and the promotion happened and was put in place, and a very senior woman on the management team showed up in my office holding a bat. And she said to me, the last creative director used to walk around the hallways with this bat and walk into people's office and just stand there with the bat and ask for what ideas they had to pitch. And so you should do that. You've just been in creative director, so you should do that. And I remember just being astounded, and she left the bat in my office, and it sat there in a corner of my office for about a week gathering dust, and I was just kind of looking at it with my head tilted, and then I finally just said, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. First of all, I would never do that. My people would look at me like I was out of my mind. And it's never the way that I would want to foster any kind of fear or creativity or ideation. So, but it was interesting to me that it was another person imposing what her ideal of the perfect creative director behavior should be upon a new person, and I just said no. And it's kind of worked out, so it's a good thing
And I think when you take on the title or the role of creative director, it's I think the assumption is you have all the answers.
Yeah, no.
I know I think that. We don't. Well, I have to have all the answers before I can even say I can claim that title, but I don't think that's true. I think you're a far better creative director if you could say, I don't have all the answers, let's work together to find them.
Let's get down to it.
So I think that the old way of I'm the creative director, I know everything, to saying, nope, I'm open, I don't have all the answers, let's work together to get that to happen.
Well, I think the more we start building diverse teams with different people at the table and different ages at the table, it's not a matter of just duplicating what you have thought-wise. It's really pushing and pulling the thinking rather than dictating this is exactly what you should do as a group.
Well, that's the bat. The bat
Well, the
is
bat.
the dictator.
Bat
Is the
would
dictator.
Make the call.
And I was reading an interesting study about diverse teams, and the more successful diverse teams have a respect and understanding for intercultural intelligence. That's a relatively new term. It's evolved from cultural competency, but it's not just knowing and acknowledging that a culture exists, but knowing the power of the diversity of various cultures and various identities mixed up with those cultures have a place in that diverse team, have a voice in that diverse team. So how do we get to know, be empathetic, and celebrate the diversity that we all have, not just race and gender, but religion, citizenship, our physical or our mental challenges, our socioeconomic class. All these things create the unique self, but then how do we celebrate all that in our teams and know where to connect the people in the voices that are in the room that create that ultimate idea and have that aha moment, right? It comes from that strength of those differences and the divergent thinking.
And I think that, you know, it's a great point, because there's so much talk about diversity, and to me, real diversity is not just asking people to the dance and ticking the box. It's asking different people to the dance and then dancing with them and allowing them to lead and allowing them to be their best. That's really what it's about, giving them a chance, listening to them, pushing them forward, and really embracing them. It's not just about what a spreadsheet looks like or ticking certain boxes about diversity. It's really engaging with those different thinkers and letting them shine.
And I think especially on the creative team, a lot of times we're looking at candidates and we're looking through skill sets. Do they know this program? Have they had this background in photography and this and that? But at the end of the day, what's most valuable is all of the experiences that they bring to the table, that are theirs, that are personal, that drive the work. Because as technology evolves, we need people who can think about how to reuse it or use it differently altogether, and you need different thinkers, and you need to inspire them.
So Jenny, I feel like I'm picking on you, but I am.
No,
So,
I'm not picking on you.
So how can we help educate ourselves and our companies and this industry about what it's like to be you and how to get the best out of you? I know you have a methodology that I'm now obsessed with now that you told me it, and it's all around being radically transparent and radically accepting. So can you talk a little bit about those two concepts?
As a way of coping with, well, all right, let me back up. I had a really shitty year, and probably one of the most profound episodes of depression ever in my life, even including following the birth of my daughter, which was pretty bad, but this was really challenging to get through. And it actually took me almost a year to figure out, oh, I'm really, really depressed. And when I say I'm a high-functioning depressed person, what I mean is I'm not the woman in the ad who's curled up in bed, rubbing her temples, and can't leave the house. I'm out there, I'm functioning, I'm raising my daughter, I'm running a business, I'm working for a phenomenal organization. But like I said, every day I'm waking up to the voices in my head telling me that I'm a failure. And every day I'm fighting against those voices. It's exhausting. So I got to a point where I'm like, okay, I gotta get help, I gotta get real help, my coping strategies aren't working anymore, I gotta figure out something different. One of those things that I did was I just started posting on social media. This is what I'm going through. I would describe it visually. I would talk about it very plainly. I'd talk about it with my friends. And I think traditionally people are like, oh, don't talk about your mental health status. You don't want to make people afraid or uncomfortable. But I'm like, no, I really do want to make them uncomfortable. Because I want them to understand if they're seeing me at a social event, and I have to go to a lot of live music shows where a lot of my friends are, if I'm not totally present, I just want them to understand what's going on. And in that process, I found that a lot of people reached out to me and said, I'm going through the same thing. Or, I know how you feel. Or, that happened to me. And so kind of being transparent about what I was going through helped me be radically accepting of what I'm going through. So that was the part of the process of owning my shit and trying to find ways to make it work for me instead of working against me. So turning that from a deficit into an asset, the process of doing that was to just share. And social media allows us to do that. And also doing it in a humorous way diffuses a lot of discomfort, I think. But I found a lot of empathy and I found a lot of acceptance. The flip side of this is we're all creative people, natural problem solvers. So when you come to someone and say, I've got a problem, we all initially go, all right, what are we gonna do? And I had to be really clear and say, I don't need you to fix this, I just need you to hear me and understand. Let me cry. I don't cry in front of people, but let me cry and let me just say, hey, you know what? I'm sorry I missed your email about that thing. I was having a really horrible day and I had to get through it, but I'm here now and I want to listen to you. And it was just a lot better to be honest with people and be transparent about what I was going through. And again, the other side of that is I work on a team of very exceptional women and incredible problem solvers. It's not easy to say to these women, I'm suffering, because they want to fix it.
Right.
And I didn't need to be fixed.
Right.
I just needed to be heard.
And understood.
And understood. And I did get a lot of understanding, which was great. But it was really hard to have that conversation going, I'm not doing great, but.
Thank you, Jenny, for sharing.
So just be open.
So we're almost out of time, and I hope you guys agree this is a conversation that needs to continue. There's so much more to be said about this. Two key takeaways that I'd love to impart on you from what I've got from the conversation today, that it's twofold, really. So as creatives, I think we need to stop apologizing for being wired differently and for the certain things that we need to make us successful creatives and to be able to come up with the ideas that we know can change everything, and certainly this industry. We need to stop being shy about asking for those things, and the more we ask and the more voices that we put out there, the more things will change for us. So we need to stop apologizing for that. And the next time someone calls you sensitive or overly thin-skinned, you should say thank you and then ask for a raise and a promotion, because that's what makes you guys special. That's what makes your ideas unique. That's what makes you have the empathy that makes your work. So you guys need to do that. And then as business leaders, I think we need to embrace the idea of hiring people who don't think like us, even as creative people. As human beings, we have a tendency to respond to the person who's saying the thing that we are thinking. And then we hire them in, and then before we know it, everybody around us looks exactly like us and thinks exactly like us, and the work goes down to here. But if we have to start being open to people who think differently and bringing them in, and to go to the dance analogy again, letting them dance, asking them to dance once they're in those doors. And we have to put those processes in place that allow for creativity to happen in the way that different minds need to make it happen. So, I think if we attack it from both of those sides, I think we'll make a difference. I think our industry will be better. I think our ideas will be better. I think we'll all be more successful and happier people. So I want to leave you with those two things. And we are exactly out of time. So thank you guys so much for coming. I hope you enjoyed the panel. Big round of applause for these amazing women who shared their stories today.
Thank you, Kathy. That was great.